Hello again, this is Sarah, back with another brief research review. Today we'll dive into a new neuroimaging study exploring how food addiction severity relates to brain function in obesity. The paper is titled, "Food Addiction Severity is Associated with Decreased Functional Connectivity and Responses to Palatable Food Pictures in Brain Areas Involved in Emotion and Cognitive Control." It was e-published in Clinical Nutrition, the journal Clinical Nutrition, on June 6th of 2025. And the background was that individuals, perhaps especially those at higher weight classifications with obesity, might often report a loss of control over eating, especially when it comes to highly palatable foods. And this type of struggle or challenge, it overlaps with what researchers are calling this concept of food addiction, which is certainly a controversial but increasingly studied construct for understanding eating behavior. So this study sought to understand how food addiction severity, as measured by the Yale Food Addiction Scale 2.0, kind of shows up or is reflected in the brain. Specifically, the researchers looked at which areas of the brain activate in response to viewing palatable food images, and also differences in resting state brain connectivity among different areas of the brain that have some control over emotion, motivation, and cognitive control. The study included 40 adult women whose BMIs were classified as being in the realm of moderate to severe obesity. The average BMI was around 39. And in addition to completing the Yale Food Addiction Scale, they also completed the binge eating scale to assess for disordered eating, and also the hospital anxiety and depression scale. Food addiction symptoms were then further classified into an absence of FA symptoms, mild/moderate, presence of symptoms, or severe food addiction symptoms. And overall, within this group of 40 women, just over half, about 57.5% of the participants met the criteria for food addiction based off of YFAS. So what were some of the results? As participants underwent MRI scans, functional MRI scans, while viewing high and low appetizing food pictures, across this entire group, food images activated brain area involved in visual processing and attention. But among those with more severe food addiction, there was reduced activation in the dorsal striatum and another area of the brain called the precentral gyrus when viewing highly appetizing foods. And that first part of the brain, the dorsal striatum, is a brain region involved in the control of reward and motivation. So decreased activation here may indicate a weakened or compromised ability to process or regulate responses to food rewards. Reduced activity was also observed in the anterior cingulate cortex, which is part of the prefrontal cortex. Lower brain activation in the ACC, the anterior cingulate cortex, is linked with behavioral inhibition deficits that could promote abnormal eating behaviors, including even hyperphagia. Additionally, executive functions to which the ACC contributes are known to be affected by traumatic life events, which are frequently reported by individuals living with severe obesity. Together, Some of these brain activation findings suggest a diminished capacity to inhibit or regulate impulsive eating behavior. Moving to the resting state connectivity findings, the results showed that higher food addiction severity was linked to decreased connectivity between the anterior cingulate cortex and the nucleus accumbens, which is a pathway really central to inhibitory control over reward. And at the same time, increased connectivity was found between the amygdala and the right hippocampus. The amygdala is associated with emotional responses, whereas the hippocampus is involved in learning and memory. So there's this connection between kind of learning, memory, emotional responses. So it's possible then that food-related memory circuits related to emotions or emotional reactivity could be more dominant in individuals with food addiction, if you're kind of reflecting on the meaning of this. Also, the researchers did look to see what was the correlation between food addiction severity and binge eating. And individuals with more severe food addiction also did have significantly higher binge eating scores, but interestingly, not a statistically significant increase in anxiety or depression scores. So although maybe there's some dysregulation, perhaps more tied to reward circuits than mood itself. What are some potential clinical implications here? Well, the authors say this. Our study suggests that FA diagnosis confirmed by brain response profiles to imagination of food consumption should be part of obesity phenotyping. Indeed, these brain responses are the manifestation of a specific brain functioning that, in the daily life, may expose obese patients to greater risk of eating disorders and binge eating. With the thought being that if, as clinicians, we are not sensitive to binge eating behavior and underlying influencing factors, that lack of awareness or attunement could significantly really increase the risk of failure for what we might consider traditional obesity treatments, certainly including bariatric surgeries and weight loss surgeries. And my thought is that this lends more perspective to the conversation about obesity and why people eat what they do, and really indicates that there could be more happening when food addiction is present at the level of neural circuitry and cognitive control that should be addressed or considered when discussing eating behavior and certainly weight. To cover some limitations and considerations, the authors note that this was the first study design that investigated food addiction among obese patients with an fMRI food task, including the resting state brain investigation. So not only have these results not yet been replicated, but the study assessed associations at a single point in time. Further studies could benefit from larger sample sizes and aim to investigate the validity of the findings via replication, and also longitudinal designs where individuals are monitored over time as those fMRI results correlate with eating behaviors. So thank you for tuning in. If you have enjoyed this, please subscribe to the Brain Food Digest, where I send a monthly collection of recently published research in the areas of brain health, nutrition, cognition, eating disorders. Remember that the information provided in this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only, is not intended as medical advice. Until next time, stay curious, stay grounded, and stay nourished.